Shana Tova, everybody. I'm Andy Greenberg, and you know, of course, the woman that's next to me is.
Carol Greenberg.
And for those of you that participated in our Slichot services, we certainly hope that you did find them meaningful and spiritual and an awakening and getting ready for the high holidays. What I thought we would do today, and I hope you agree, I want you to hold on to something as we do this, probably your armchair. You can hold on to me if you want on my arm. We are going to be examining ourselves at this particular time in this particular discussion. Now, I'm not talking about what we do on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, where we go deep into our souls, we understand our sins, our strengths, our weaknesses, etc., etc. Not going to do that. So you might be asking yourself, Carol, when I say we're going to be examining ourselves, what would I be in any way, shape, or form thinking of?
Maybe examining the whole Jewish people? Maybe.
By the way, we do not rehearse this, okay? So yes, we are going to examine the state of Judaism in the United States today. And the source of the material, just to let you know, things that I don't make this stuff up, is going to be the 2020-2021 Pew report, P-E-W, Pew Research Report, that was published in 2020 and updated in 2021. So you might or might not recall that the really first groundbreaking Pew Research report about Judaism came out about 10, 12 years ago. And for the most part, depending how you wanted to interpret it, it forecasted the decline of the Jewish religion and the Jewish people. Now, some people say that was a bit of an overreaction. What do you think? What do you think has happened to the Jewish people over the past 10 years or 10, 12 years?
I think that I read and the things that I hear, I think a lot of them have gone over to the Orthodox side.
Okay, a lot of Jews have gone over to the Orthodox side, which would be a little bit counterintuitive or against conventional wisdom, because what we're hearing generally in the United States, and we'll get more information about that later, is that religion and religious practices and spirituality is on the decline. Now, there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be revealed, and some of them are going to be upsetting to you, which is why I ask you to hold on to something. Some of it is going to be, geez, you know what? I expected that. And some of it is going to be somewhat of a surprise. So, if I was to say to you, which I am, I hate asking a question like that, so I apologize. So, what do you think would be the most upsetting part about the research that came out? And again, you haven't seen the research yet. What would be upsetting?
I think that if the if we're focusing strictly on Judaism, correct?
Correct.
So if the majority of Jews did not believe in God, I think that would be the most upsetting to me.
Okay. And what would be the most surprising?
That they still have faith.
Okay. So you went.
Yeah, I
Okay. All
went
right.
from
Well,
the extreme. Yeah,
that's good. That's good.
yeah.
So I want you to think about that for yourself. So let's go ahead and begin. Some of this is not going to be a data dump. I'm going to make some statements, ask some questions, and then reveal some of the answers. So the top headline in this whole report was U.S. Jews are culturally engaged, increasingly diverse, politically polarized, and what do you think their number one worry is?
Safe, their safety against Jews.
Okay, I think what you're trying to say is anti-Semitism.
Right.
Yes,
Is that correct?
that is correct. Okay, so again, culturally engaged, increasingly diverse, politically polarized, and worried about anti-Semitism. What's missing here?
What I said before?
Religious practice,
Religious practice.
belief in God. Now, I'm not going to ask you because it's none of my business, and I'm not going to make a judgment if you go to shul, if you don't go to shul, how many times you go to shul. Again, I am just revealing what was there. And by the way, how did they get to this data? They interviewed over 60,000 people, so it's statistically correct. So here's what they found, something very interesting. For how many of us are over the age of 65? Yeah, I think just about every one of us. What they found was people who are over the age of 65 identify themselves, 84%, identify themselves as Jews by religion. Religion meaning what?
They were born as Jews.
They were born as Jews, and now that they're born as Jews, what do they do as Jews?
They practiced
They
it too.
practice Judaism. Not necessarily cultural Judaism, but spiritual, religious, traditional Judaism. And yet, only 16% identify themselves as Jews with no religion. Now, as we go to the younger generation, do you think that number holds steady, or how do you think those numbers
No,
adjust?
I think that the younger generation does not identify with themselves as Jews.
Yeah, the number is astounding. So
Excuse me.
you remember 84% of those over 65 say, yes, I identify myself as Jews by religion. Yet, between the ages of 18 and 29, 60% identify themselves as Jews by religion, and 40% Jews of no religion. Is that surprising or not?
I don't think that's surprising.
Why not?
Because I think as time goes on and we become more invested in technology and just different things, there's no pull or gravitation to religion. They don't see the purpose in it. It
Okay,
doesn't bring them anything.
if I would use the word they can't relate to it, would that
They
make
can't
sense?
relate to it. Yes,
Okay, they
that
can't
would make
relate to it.
sense.
So here's what they say. Jewish Americans participate at least occasionally, both in some traditional religious practices, which would be what?
Would be going to on the holidays.
Holidays.
The
That's
holidays.
exactly right. Going to synagogue or fasting on Yom Kippur
Or having holiday dinner.
or having holiday dinner
Which really doesn't bring in the practice.
and in some Jewish cultural activities. Now, before I go on, what would be, in your mind, the number one Jewish cultural activity that this Pew report would refer to as people identifying themselves as culturally Jewish?
Hanukkah?
All right, close.
Uh,
What part of Hanukkah? Very close.
what part of Hanukkah?
Yes.
Lighting the candles.
No.
No. Exchanging gifts.
No.
I don't know.
Potato latkes.
Potato latkes. Interesting.
According
You
to,
don't have to wait for a holiday to have potato latkes.
well, not only that, you can go to Denny's.
I don't know about
You can't.
that.
You can't have it right there. They don't call potato latkes, but they call them potato pancakes, and you don't even have to go to Denny's.
Right.
So all of a sudden, if you're going to practice cultural Judaism, you are going to have potato latkes. Or, this one kind of surprised me. This one surprised me. Israeli movies, which, by the way, is rising in popularity, or reading Jewish news online, which is really interesting because that's what surprised me that so many people are in fact watching Israeli movies and looking at Jewish news online. However, among young Jewish adults, there are two sharply divergent expressions. Don't worry, I'm not going to read the whole report. Of Jews appear to be gaining ground. One involved religion deeply enmeshed in every aspect of life, which is,
Orthodox.
yes, in what age group are the Orthodox?
I would say they're in their 20s, 30s.
20s and 30s, and the other with no religion at all. So, yes, we are increasingly diverse. And yet, 27% of young Jewish adults, I'm sorry, more than that, about 27% of Jewish adults, as I mentioned, do not in total identify with the Jewish religion, and they consider themselves atheist, agnostic, or nothing in particular. In ages 30 and over, under 30, I should say, 4 in 10 describe themselves this way, 40%. All right, before I go on, what's your initial reaction to all this?
Actually, I'm not surprised. That's the trend that's been going on. I'm not surprised.
And why am I bringing this up around Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur? Because around Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, we examine who we are, and then if we make the choice to take corrective action, that's what we do. If we make a choice not to take corrective action, that's what we do. So again, question. I would normally ask you this question if we were together, but she's your spokesperson. Doesn't mean you have to agree with her opinions, by the way, but you can't throw things at the screen. So, should any correction be made, or should we allow this to continue, where the younger generation, 40%, don't even identify themselves as being Jewish by religion?
40% is a scary number because if it's 40% now, then it's going to go up. So somehow we have to make it palatable to them to find some part of Judaism that they want to be included in.
Okay, all right. And how do you recommend going about doing that?
I do not have an idea because I know all the traditional methods do not work. You know, there are maybe because of this technology generation podcast where they listen to something where they don't actually have to go anywhere and do anything. Maybe they can just listening because sometimes listening feeds into your brain. But I don't have too much of anything else because it hasn't worked.
So, because you are my wife, may I disagree with you?
Of course.
So, then why is it that the Orthodox are attracting young people?
I think because some of them don't want to be in a community, like the idea of a community, and that's what the Orthodox is. It's a community. It's a very tight knit community. They have their own rules. They have their own way of doing things, and within that group, it it's acceptable. I mean, everything is accepted in that group.
So, when your ancestors and my ancestors and your ancestors came over from Europe, weren't they a tight knit group? Weren't they a community of
Well, they
refugees?
were, yeah, they
Yeah,
were, yeah,
yeah. So, what happened to that tight knit group?
time,
Why hasn't that impact?
invention.
Why hasn't that impacted the Orthodox?
Maybe it did for a while, and then it came back again. Maybe
Hmm.
it did for a while.
So I know I'm putting you on the spot, and we'll examine that. But I want to keep this open. All right, I'm just going to do a 2 seconds of politics because we are talking about the Orthodox, Reform, Conservative, and again, I am not judgmental which one is better or worse. That's a choice for each one of us to make individually. You know that I practice the conservative side of the Jewish religion, which actually, believe it or not, puts me in the minority because the minority of Jews
Is in
practice
reform.
it. No, 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 no.
No, it's not.
You have yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. You have Reform. Actually, I take that back. Conservative is second, and Orthodox is third. But Orthodox is growing faster than anything else. All right, 71% of Jewish people considered themselves Democrats or leaned as Democrats, and the balance were Republicans. Okay, I'm not saying one is better, one is worse. Please don't read into any way I present those two parties. Okay, however, which religious portion of the Jewish people tend to be Republicans?
Well, the way you're asking the question makes me want to say the Orthodox.
Yes, the Orthodox are the ones that are Republicans, and they support Republican doctrines, etc., etc. And the conservative and reform are with the Democrats. Now, not saying one's better than the other, but watch this, okay? The Democratic platform and party, and again, I'm not revealing what I am or what Carol is has been classified. This is not my opinion, as liberal. Conservative and reform are classified as liberal. So there certainly is a connection there. And the Orthodox tend to be more of traditionalists and rule bearing, where in theory the Republicans are also. So I just wanted to throw that in for for just a moment. Okay, so let's go ahead and continue. According to the report, there is about 7.5 million Jews in the United States today. Of that, 5.8 million are adults, 1.8 million are children. Okay, so let's go with this. 1.8 million adults are children. Okay,
Adults are
I'm
kids.
sorry. Thank you. 1.8 million are children. Regrettably, the 5.8 million adults eventually will leave this earth and their children will take over. If their children have little relationship to the Jewish religion, what will happen?
They will die out.
Except for which sect?
for the Orthodox.
except for the Orthodox sect. So that's a very, very interesting piece of data. I don't have information to suggest, but I'm just going to guess that in the past there might have been more Jewish children than this report certainly identifies. Because if we remember, many of us had 4 or 5 children. I must confess, I only have one, and that was by choice. Okay. So I actually went against the Jewish decree of multiply. But now we can understand. But my son has 3 daughters, so maybe he's somewhere in there. His rabbi always said to him, have more. I will tell you that, but they don't want any more. But he might have listened because it was a 9-year span between
A 7 year
7 year span, and then he ended up having 2 more. But that in itself, to me, is somewhat scary. Okay, so what do you think about that? Is that a sign of doom coming up? It's potentially a doom coming up. Okay, now, but watch this. The survey continues to find that Americans, Jewish Americans on average, and here's the funny part, are older, which we just proved, have higher levels of education, earn higher incomes, and are more geographically concentrated in the Northeast than America overall. Now, that shoots a hole in your theory about we are no longer a community. Because if most of the Jews live in the Northeast, combination of Orthodox, Reform, and Conservative,
But
go ahead.
that's community by name, because we still could be spread out just because we're concentrated living in a certain area. The
Mhm.
area is still very big.
Okay.
And it doesn't mean that all these people connect with one another.
Mm-hmm. All right. Interesting. Interesting. All right. So, but we are still supposedly a community. Supposedly. All right. How are we doing so far on this information? Do you find it interesting?
Interesting.
Okay. So let's move on. How about you? Hope you find it interesting. Here we go. Now, here's something interesting. What percentage, I think, of Jews consider anti-Semitism a problem today?
20%.
3/4, meaning 75%
Wow.
of all the Jewish people say there is more anti-Semitism in the United States than there were 5 years ago, and just over 53% say that as a Jewish person in the United States, they feel less safe than they did 5 years ago. To make it even more concerning, Jews who wear distinctively religious attire, such as a kippah, a head covering, tzitzit, are particularly likely to say that they feel less safe. But what percentage of those who feel less safe are staying away from Jewish events?
20%.
5.
5%.
Yeah, even among those who feel less safe, just 1 in 10, or 5% of all U.S. Jews, that sounds like 10%, report that they have stayed away from a Jewish event or observance as a result. Now, that to me is extremely interesting because we say we're less safe, but there is a Jewish event going on, and what our mind and heart is telling us is, look, I am connected to Judaism. It could be a cultural event, it could be a religious event, and I'm not going to let this anti Semitism stop me from going there, even though I know there could be greater chances of potential danger.
Also, in most, if not all, Jewish events at the same time are now heavily guarded, or not heavily guarded, or guarded by someone they hire to watch over them. So maybe that's making them feel safe.
Yeah, Carol, I want to agree with you,
Okay, but you can't.
but I can't. It gives you the image of feeling safe. And if anybody out there is a security guard, I thank you so much for what you do. I don't want to belittle it, okay? But the fact of the matter is, what do they make? $15, $20 an hour? And they've had the training. I want them there. Please don't misunderstand me. I want them there. I want that security.
But you don't feel like they can protect you.
That would be absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. All right. There's another piece of data that says conservative Jews are older than Jews who identify with other streams. I am conservative, so I still tend to go with that. Conservative, this I think we probably know. Conservative and Reform Jews tend to be less religiously observant in traditional ways, like keeping kosher and going to services, etc., etc. All right. What percentage of Jews in today's world remember the Holocaust?
I don't. It's not the younger generation. It's only the Holocaust survivors and their families, and maybe their families get someone else interesting. So I don't have an age, but that's where I'm leaning toward.
Give me a percentage of all the
What
Jews.
percentage remember of
Yeah,
younger people
the
remember?
total Jews.
Total Jews, 25%.
76%
Wow, I'm off on my numbers today.
remember the Holocaust. Now, if someone was to ask you, and I'm going to ask you, what is important to Jewish people about their Jewish identity? So if they were going to be asked, what is the most important thing about your Jewish identity? This is really going to surprise you. What do you think they would say?
I'm gonna have to say your belief in God.
Okay, I know you're going to have to say that.
That's what I'm saying,
That's what
but
you're
I'm
saying.
sure
I'm
that's not.
going to have to say it.
No, I'm sure that's not what they said.
Watch this. Leading a moral and ethical life. 72% of the respondents said that is essential to their Jewish identity. So, what does that mean?
I don't know, but you're saying that in order that only Jews lead a moral and ethical life,
I didn't say that.
but that's what it
No,
infers.
it says, no, I don't, where do you get that inference
I don't.
from?
That's what I heard.
Okay,
But anyway,
it says that even if you do not believe in God, even if you do not
right,
go to a religious service,
you can be
okay,
moral and ethical.
being moral and ethical are part of your Jewish identity. What do you think about that?
I think that's like an oxymoron
Because
because I think some people's images of Jews are not that they are moral and ethical, that they are negotiators, they will get anything they can and all that. So to me, it's sort of like an oxymoron
well, where does it say you can't negotiate?
in a negative way,
What do you mean by that?
and just that they might be cheap, they might try to get everything under the table, blah blah blah.
Okay, so that would be our image that is perceived by other people, is
Right,
what you're trying
that's
to
what I'm
say.
saying.
But we're allowed to negotiate. Everybody
Yeah, of course,
negotiates, but in
everybody.
negotiations, if you live a moral and ethical life, you're not supposed to take advantage of the other person's weaknesses. It's okay to negotiate. So what does that mean in plain English? If you're negotiating against a weaker person and man, the whole thing is lopsided, that's not ethical, that's not moral. If you are negotiating against someone who's of equal strength and education in negotiation and you walk away lopsided, you're okay with that. So that's basically what that means. Now, here's a question: is that realistic?
What realistic?
The fact what I just described in terms of negotiation, don't take advantage of the weaker person.
Is that realistic? No.
No.
People are going to get what they want to get. They want if they go in to negotiate, they want to walk away feeling like they got the best deal.
So you now represent what's 100 minus 72? The math isn't too good for me. So 28. Here it is. 28. You represent the 28% of the folks that don't believe in, if I read you right, moral and ethical
I
life.
didn't say that. I just said the one had nothing to do with the thing. I would never do anything that wasn't ethical. But you
I
just
know.
said
I know.
negotiation is
Yeah.
negotiation. If you negotiate and you come out with what you
Yeah.
want, why is that morally incorrect?
If you do it, as I said, if
And
you're lopsided,
we're supposed to know that the other person is weak in negotiating skills.
yes. As a matter of fact, you and I have done it. You've seen me return money.
I've seen you. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's move on.
Okay, let's
All
move
right.
on.
Now, watch this. This I think becomes interesting anyway. Now here we go. And 59%, ready for this? This is why we're successful. 59% consider intellectual curiosity important in living a Jewish identity.
I agree with that.
Okay.
In a Jewish family, your children are brought up to ask questions. People don't say, keep your mouth shut, it's because I said so. Most parents will answer their children's questions. They will be happy that the children are
Yes.
touches the kids.
Yes. So basically, I think you might have heard me say this before, but I'll say it again. Marion Ross. Marion Ross. She was the actress that played Mrs. Cunningham on Happy Days. And due to a business transaction, I happen to know her, or she knows me, and we had lunch together, etc., etc. She's not Jewish. She's Irish Catholic to the teeth. And one time when we had lunch, I complimented her on winning an Emmy for playing a Jewish grandmother on a short-lived show called Brooklyn Bridge, one of my favorite shows ever. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Anyway, so what occurred was I said, "How did you prepare for the role?" She said, "Well, I studied Judaism and how Jewish grandparents react." And she said, "Here's my takeaway. Here's my takeaway. In secular school, the kids are taught how to answer questions. The Jewish people teach their kids how to ask questions. And that's where that intellectual curiosity comes from. And that's where, and this might sound somewhat biased, and I'm sure you'll hit me for this one. That's where, or tap me. That's where the Jewish advantage comes in every industry that we have ever gotten ourselves involved in. We become curious, we become intellectual, we innovate, and we create.
I'm not going to hit you on it. I think
Okay.
you were right on the nose.
Okay, so let's move on. However, 20% are really good about eating traditional Jewish foods. Now, I'm going to comment on that. Do you have to be Jewish to eat a bagel?
No,
Do you have to
everybody
be
eats bagels. Everyone loves bagels.
do you have to be Jewish to eat the cream cheese and lox with it?
No.
No. Do you have to be Jewish to eat gefilte fish?
I would say on that count, I'm
Yeah,
going to say yes.
yeah.
I don't know too many non-Jews who like the focus.
No. Can you?
I'm going to say yes.
Yeah, I figured I threw that one in there. How about Publix? Publix. I'm sorry. How about the brisket that you can buy at Publix?
Everybody makes
You
brisket.
betcha. And how about herring?
But no, because the Swedish people eat herring, so it depends on what,
Okay, but the point
local.
I'm trying to make is that you don't have to be Jewish to eat so-called traditional
Right.
Jewish foods. Okay, and now only 15% consider observing Jewish law to be essential elements of what being Jewish means to them personally. So here we are, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. We stand in front of this ark, whether you believe there's a God or a Torah, not going to get involved in that. But in the services that but in the services that we talk about, we're pledging to live a Jewish life following Jewish law. Are we being hypocritical, or do we not know what we are praying for? And why is it that 85% of Jewish people do not find following Jewish law part of Jewish identity? Before I ask for your response, this is a multifaceted question. Is that part of the problem? And should that be worked on, comma, or should that be accepted as is? There we go.
I think what most people will find the majority of Jewish laws are too complicated or too hard for them to keep. I think the very basic Ten Commandments everybody will be keeping. I mean, those make sense. Do not kill, honor thy mother and father, etc.,
Do
etc.
not commit adultery.
My commit adultery, keep the Sabbath, and that would go for any religion, whatever their Sabbath is. And I'm not, it's shame on me, but I can't remember
Okay,
every
no,
single
that's
one of
fine.
them. But see, the question is so multifaceted that I can't remember half the questions. But I think most people think those laws are too hard, and the reason that I think when you think of the high holy days, whether you are a practicing Jew or not, you feel like it's like almost like a God fearing holiday. Like even if you don't do anything the rest of the year, you should do something at that time because maybe there is somebody watching you.
But 65% of all, so I'm going to go both ways. 65%, here's the number, of all Jews in America today do not believe God exists.
Right.
35% do. Out of those 35%, a majority are Orthodox. Therefore, which is about 9 to 10% of the Jewish population, by the way. Therefore, one could play with the numbers a little bit and say probably 90% of all the Jews, I'll go 85%, do not believe that God exists. If 35% think they do, and most of those are Orthodox, okay? So maybe it's 75%, 80, play with the numbers if you're a statistician. So if you're standing in front of God, even if you don't believe in a God, why would the high holy days have any relationship to you whatsoever, where it would just not make any sense?
It's tradition.
Oh,
I don't know. I don't know
see?
an answer for it.
And is it time for us to re-examine our relationship to Jewish law? See, here's the problem. I think that most people don't follow Jewish law because they were never taught the benefits of Jewish law. What's in it for me? Because 83% of the Orthodox, I'm not Orthodox, and I'm not saying anybody should be Orthodox. I want to throw that disclaimer in, nor do I want to espouse the fact that I admire the Orthodox or that I don't admire them. I'm just reporting the numbers. 83% of the Orthodox Jews find that following Jewish law is important to them. And by the way, who studied more Jewish law than anybody else? The Orthodox. Now, is it time for us during this high holiday period to accept these numbers as is, or make pledges to say this year I'm going to be part of a turnaround, and even at my age, or I'm going to sit with my grandkids or my kids, and maybe I'll learn another Jewish law a day of current times. You don't have to worry about the sacrifices, or not. All right. So let's go ahead and continue. Here's something really interesting. Now this you talk about diverse. You talk about people not getting along with each other. You talk about people not relating to each other, and this you've heard me talk about a long time. Half of Orthodox Jews in the U.S. say they have not much or nothing at all in common with Jews in the Reform movement, and just 9% feel that they have a lot in common with Reform Jews. In other words, we've all heard this before. An Orthodox Jew will look at a Reform Jew and says, "You're not
A Jew.
a Jew." And that, again, that's a hard number to comment on. Okay, well, actually, I am going to comment on that one. We're all Jews, and if we're going to rebuild this religion and show our kids that 1.8 million that I referred to earlier, that one day will be adults, okay? And out of that 1.8 million, here's where you start to play with the numbers. 180,000 of them, if Orthodox still maintains its 10%, that means 1.7 or 1.65 million will be Reform and Conservative, okay? Then this whole thing is finished. Does that make sense? Okay? But that's not the only fault. Reform Jews generally reciprocate these feelings. 6 in 10 say they have not much in common or nothing in common with the Orthodox, while 30% of Reform Jews say they have some things in common, and 9% say they have a lot in common with Jews, with Orthodox Jews. Look, the fact of the matter is, if we ask everybody about anti-Semitism, all of a sudden we have one thing in common. They don't like me. They don't like me if I'm Reformed, Conservative, or Orthodox. But we're Jews. But past that, boom, nothing. Nothing. Then we go our separate ways and scream and yell at each other. Now, in fact, both conservative and Reformed Jews are more likely to say that they have a lot or some in common with Jews where?
In Israel?
Very good. That's interesting. With Jews in Israel. Let me go over that again. Both conservative and Reformed Jews are likely to say they have a lot or some in common with Jews in Israel. 77% for the conservative and 61% with the Orthodox. With the conservative. That surprised me. We feel, as a conservative Jew, that we have more in common with the Israeli Jew that we probably have not seen in a long time, who, by the way, is secular, and maybe that's most of them are secular. Maybe that's the reason why. But it's interesting. Does it have anything to do with anything? Who knows? All right, let's move on. Jews are less likely than Americans overall, this one's a tough one, to attend religious services weekly or believe in God of the Bible. Let me repeat that. You might have heard me say this once before, but in a different way. So there was a report that came out one time that says if you take a look at all the religions and how many participate by percentage in religious and spiritual activities within their religion, the Jews fall on the bottom of that list, which means the Protestants, the Catholics, the Christians, the Lutherans, I can't name them all, go to more services than us Jews. Now, we're in the second bottom of the list.
Who's the last one?
What do you think?
I don't know.
The atheist.
The atheist. Oh, wow. That's not a very good thing.
The atheist. Okay?
But I
Now,
think that maybe they all, the ones that are on the top of it, go to services because they go out of fear. Or they go because they go because their doctrine is do good on earth, and then you will go to the next afterlife, and there will be a reward waiting for you, and it's out of fear, and because in a lot of these places you can go and get something off your chest every week. You can go to confession. You can't do that in the Jewish religion.
yeah, but here we go. Here's one of the underlying reasons. I guess the number
Okay,
shifted a little bit, and I've really got
curious.
the
I'm curious to
the
hear
number
that.
went down. Actually, I have to correct something. The number went down. Here we go. Of all the adults in the United States, 56% they believe in the God of the Bible. Over half. Okay, and I guess I've got to readjust my numbers. 26%, not 35. We lost 9%. I should have updated this in my head. 26% of all the Jewish adults say that they believe in the God of the Bible, which means what? 74% say no. That number dropped. So I've got to change my narrative in the future. That number dropped. Oddly enough, 41% of all people in the United States considered religion as important to them. What percentage of Jewish adults considered religion important to them?
Tell me.
Take a guess.
I don't know. 20%.
Very good. 21.
21%.
See, nothing wrong with guessing. 21%. Now, watch this. Of all the U.S. adults, 27% attend a religious weekly service. What percentage of Jews do you think attend a weekly religious service?
15.
Not bad. 12. 12%. What does that mean? 88, I got that right yet. 88% of all Jewish people do not go to a religious service on a weekly basis. I'm not saying they're right, I'm not saying they're wrong, but I guess I am, because this is Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, and many of those 88% will be, not all, in shul on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. They're there to pledge that things will change during the coming year. And they were right. What changed? We lost 9%. We lost 9%. So here's the question, and I understand the fear factor and everything else. I got all of that. Why is it that we have lost, with the exception of the Orthodox, so why is it that we have lost our belief of the God in the Bible?
Because of events that are going on now.
Okay, what happened to the rest of the country?
I don't know. Maybe and you don't know, maybe they're having the same problem. I believe the churches are having the same problem. Attendance is down.
In general, Jews are far less religious than American adults as a whole, or at least by conventional measures, as we talked about earlier. So on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, we're supposed to examine ourselves. That's why I'm having this particular discussion. But now let's go ahead and analyze it, because the report actually did. Okay? Most Jews who attend synagogue regularly say they find it spiritually meaningful to go. They get something out of it. Okay? It's spiritually meaningful. Now, then they went ahead and examined two things: 9 possible reasons why people do attend services, and 11 reasons why people do not attend services. Okay, so I'm going to start off with the positive. What reasons do you think people do go to services?
They want to be in their own community. They want to be with people who are like them.
Okay, all right, good. What else?
They want to be spiritual. They want to come away with a good feeling.
Okay. Now, I know you very well.
Very well.
You rate a religious service based on how it reaches you. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
So let me ask you this question. I don't think I've ever asked you this. How do you know it reached you?
How do I know it reached me?
Yeah.
Because I was attentive. I didn't zone out. I left with feeling and saying, oh, maybe I thought about this or that.
But a lot of it is in Hebrew. And depending upon the rabbi and cantor, you still either say, wow, they reached me, or I didn't, or they didn't.
Well, you're right. A lot of it's in Hebrew, so I'm talking about the English part or the spirituality I felt or the connection.
Was it in the way that the cantor presented the Jewish prayers?
Sometimes.
Yes.
Sometimes.
You have your favorite cantors
I
and
do.
some that you don't.
Right.
Okay. So let's see what they say. Number one answer is what you said.
Community.
A sense of belonging.
Sense of belonging.
So you're absolutely right. I don't know how you did on this. Okay. And what does that mean? It says, I feel connected to my ancestry or history. 2/3, however, this is interesting, say they feel a religious obligation. But most of that came from Orthodox Jews. But even conservative Jews or Reform Jews who do go to services say they feel an obligation. Wow. All right. What's an obligation? What does an obligation mean?
You need to do it. You're compelled to do it.
Okay. So here's something we've talked about before. I don't think you and I have had this discussion, but once in the past, see if you remember it. According to Judaism, what do you get more credit for? A mitzvah you have to do or a mitzvah you want to do?
A mitzvah you want to do. Although you get credit, even if you inadvertently do a mitzvah that you don't know you did, you get credit. Or you didn't want to do it, but somehow it got done, you still get credit for it.
No, I got that.
Okay.
Okay, but you're wrong.
But yes, it's the mitzvah that you
Nope.
want to do.
Nope. It's a
No?
mitzvah you have to do.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because you don't want to do it.
That's okay. So
You're obligated to do it, and you resist doing it, but you do it anyway, which means you overcame temptation. So that's where the obligation comes from. You feel obligated to do it. You don't want to do it, but you're obligated. It doesn't say you volunteered. You wake up in the morning and say, oh, I want to go. I want to go. No, I have to go. It's Shabbos. I have to go to shul. It's an obligation. All right. How about that one? Okay. Fewer Jewish congregants say they go to religious services. Watch this. But the number's high. So I'm going to rephrase this. What percentage of Jewish people do you think go to services to please a spouse or family member?
30%.
No, higher, actually. 42%.
Wow.
Now, here's where you and I come in. This is beautiful. If we talk to I love this part. If we talk to our grandkids or great grandkids, okay, and we have them go to a weekly or bi-weekly or at least once a month Shabbat services to please you, I think we're in the process of starting a reversal. Your opinion. You're looking at me
My
like, wow.
opinion is that as long as they're asking them to do that and they do it, but once they stop asking, they're not going to go.
Okay.
So it's the constant cajoling.
Oh,
they're not going to
yes.
go.
Right.
Because who's going to
Yeah.
make them go?
Yeah. The constant cajoling. Thank you for that. The constant cajoling. If we know that 42% of the people go to service just to please a family member or a spouse, it's time to put the pressure on. I'm just telling you this stuff.
You can tell me what you
All
want.
right. And 22%, this is interesting, feel guilty if they don't go. Now, I realize it's only 22%. I got that. But it's still 22%. What does that mean? I feel guilty that I'm not going.
I should have gone. What kept me from going? Why didn't I go?
Yeah, exactly right. All right, now let's talk about the 11 reasons, or many of the reasons people don't go. Okay, watch this. What do you think the number one reason is that people don't go?
I don't have time. My schedule is too full. My kids have all things going on. I don't know.
All right, not bad. Number one answer. Surprised you didn't get this one. I'm not religious. I'm not religious. Why should I go? Okay. Then the second question is, why aren't you religious? But whatever. 2/3 of infrequent attendees say that the reason that they don't go to 2/3 of infrequent attendees say that this is the reason. So that's 66%. Other common explanations are, I'm not interested. Another one says, I feel pressured to do more and give more. And I agree with that. This one I happen to agree with. The moment you sign up as a member of a synagogue and you walk in as a new member, you're not going to like this expression. You're treated as fresh meat. Okay?
What can you participate in?
Right.
How can you become a member of a committee? What can you give?
Right. We
What can
need
you
leaders.
volunteer
We
for?
need volunteers. We need that. Okay? To me, that's a biggie. Nah, maybe I'm a little bit off,
A
but
big turnoff.
it is a big turnoff. Here's another one. I don't feel welcome.
Yeah, it's because they're walking in and people aren't coming over and saying, hi, how are you? Welcome.
Mhm. I fear for my security, which we talked about, and people treat me like I don't really belong. Okay. Now, are these correctable?
Yeah, they are.
How?
Someone can welcome someone. They can back off and let the people get a feel for participating in services before they
Mhm.
jump all over them and
Yeah.
ask them for their help,
Yeah.
etc., etc.
All right. So, if I was to be involved with somebody in a conversation, and I'm not here, but if I was, I would take these, and many of you know I'm a sales and marketing guy. Doesn't mean I'm any good, but here, but but here's what I would do. If someone would say I'm not religious, okay, here's where I would start using the data. Geez, all right, I can appreciate that, but you know what's interesting? 41% of Americans are, and only 22% of Jews are. Okay, so what is it that the 41% of Americans who live in the same country as you do find that, in your opinion, are important to being religious? That'll surprise them because they think there are more of them than there really are. The second part I would say is I'm not interested. What would my question to them be? What is it that does interest you in life? So I would begin to understand how they would react. Do they like discussion? Do they like reading? Do they like learning? Do they like singing? I want to find out what does interest them. Go ahead.
And I think a lot of people would say, depending on the synagogue you go to, maybe too much of the service is in Hebrew for them.
Yes, and that is correctable. Okay, that is
Well,
correctable.
not really, because if a synagogue has done it this way, they're not gonna change for one
Okay,
person.
all right. So let me ask you this question, Carol. Do you know Hebrew?
Some,
So, do you know a lot? Do you know prayer book Hebrew? No,
some,
not really. I mean, if you look at
no,
the Hebrew
no,
page, you really
no,
don't know, to be
no.
open. Okay. So when a good chazan gets up there and sings Kol Nidre, okay?
Yeah, as
Oh,
long as he sounds like Neil
did
Diamond.
you see that face? Did you see that face?
See
Did you
that?
see that
As long as
face?
he sounds like
Okay.
Neil Diamond,
Yeah,
he's
that
good.
little snippet. This has been haunting me. I don't know if I've shared the story with you. I get traumatic. I do this.
Oh, they did a good job.
It's a trauma. But um, where was I? So you don't understand the words,
But
but you feel it.
I'm used. I've heard it so often.
You
I'm used.
feel it.
Yeah,
Okay, you feel it.
depending on the person that's singing it.
Let me answer this question. Do you know the words to what Hashkivenu means? You do now, but in English.
Yes, because
But
I
prior
sing
to
the English.
but
Yes.
prior to that, when we first started going in
No,
online, no. When the cantor sung it, did you
I
feel
love
it?
the
You
way he
know,
sang it.
loved it. So
I
how
love
can
it.
you say they don't know Hebrew that they're not interested?
But that's just some songs. That some of the prayers that they just go on and on.
So the answer to the question is to make a religious service a learner service. Okay, to explain it. And when they say that I don't feel welcome, that's the welcoming committee. We talked about the rest of it. So a lot of this, I'm not trying to shove it off, but a lot of it is really, really correctable. And this is the time to correct it. All right. We talked about how they feel about the anti Semitism. We talked about the belief in God. So, what I also want to be able to talk about is their relationship with Israel. More broadly, U.S. Jews, young Jews, are less emotionally attached to Israel than the older ones. As of 2020, half of Jewish adults under 30 describe themselves as very or somewhat emotionally attached to Israel. Okay, which means 50% are not. And 75% of us who are over 65 find a real connection to Israel. Okay, what does that have to do with the future? When these guys grow up, the 1.8 million, what are they going to think about when it comes to Israel? Are they going to donate to Israel? No. Are they going to visit Israel? Probably not. Are they going to feel that it is important to identify as a Jewish person, that Israel is important to them? No. Does
That's
that
why a
present a
lot of these
problem? Yes.
That's why a lot of these organizations sponsor trips like Birthright
You
to
bet.
get the kids interested in the history of Israel.
So, what percentage of U.S. Adults do you believe had visited Israel? Jewish
35.
adults. Okay. 45%. What does that mean?
So that's 10.
55% of half of U.S. Jewish adults have not visited Israel.
And I've heard from some people say I've always wanted to go, but I'm afraid for my safety.
I got that. You go to Chicago.
I know.
Where are you going to be safer? Okay. Go to Chicago. Go to Times Square. Okay. Go to Portland, Oregon, etc., etc. Okay. If someone offered to, if you had a wedding in Chicago, would you go?
No.
You wouldn't. Interesting. Okay. Now,
Chicago is crazy
all
now.
right. Let me rephrase the question then. Where do you have more police and army security
In
in
Israel.
in Israel?
No other place.
No other place. So this whole thing about safety is something else. All right. Nearly 1 in 5 Jews say they often or sometimes participate in activities or services with Chabad. Wow. 1 in 5 equals 20%. We talked a little bit about, and I skirted the issue, that the young Jews are being attracted to Judaism, Orthodox Judaism. Includes Chabad, but also modern
Okay.
Orthodox synagogues. So the question is, if all of this is true, which it is, how is it, and in addition to the community, because there are religious obligations that people participate in. In other words, they have found a way to make services interesting, make people feel welcome, make people feel spiritual, even though they don't have the big singing and the big choirs and the whole 9 yards. So, what secret have they unlocked where 20% of the Jewish people have participated in a Chabad activity? And I might add, I'm one of them, as is Carol. What is it?
Well, I'm speaking on my own experiences when I've done that. I did not find them judgmental. I did not
Ah,
find them judgmental. I found them educational and wanting to pass on that education so that maybe you would get interested. But I did not find them judgmental at all.
hmm, there it is. They were able to eliminate some of the objectives that we talked about. Maybe they are better salespeople than I am. They got it done, and they're getting it done. That is the biggest source of growth. But I'm going to give you another answer. Doesn't mean it's right. I think they are more genuine and sincere. I don't think they're performing. I think that they do and present prayers out of their hearts, not out of not out of routine. Now, I'm not saying I like a modern Orthodox service. I'm not saying I don't like it, but I will tell you this. My son is modern Orthodox. You and I have gone to their services, okay? And yes, there is a mechitza. Carol and I do not sit together. There is services that are led. But I got to tell you, there's more ruach and I don't know if you agree with me or not. There's more ruach and there's more spirit among the congregants. And man, do you get that sense of singing and belonging and spirituality. And you agree with
Yeah,
me?
even though I don't like to be separated, I really agree with you.
Yes. And do you know any words that they're saying since you know Hebrew? But yet it got to you. So this thing that we don't understand the Hebrew is somehow they found a way to neutralize it even among her. How about that? All right. Here's something interesting about Judaism. 9 in 610 are college graduates, which is interesting. Watch this. 1 in 4 American Jews say they have family incomes of $200,000 or more, which represents 23% of the population. What percentage of the population of America earns over 200,000?
Not very much.
4.
Wow.
4. Half of U.S. Jews describe their financial situation as living comfortably, compared, which is 53%. Only 29% of U.S. adults find themselves living comfortably. Wow. What a group. Let me finish up and talk about what's synagogue membership. We have just showed on purpose that as Jews, we tend to be extremely successful. And we drive ourselves to success. And we are intellectually capable and curious about many, many things. How many of us, by percentage, belong to a Jewish synagogue? What do you think, Carol? What
12%.
percentage of Jews?
12%.
12%? Okay. The answer is in 64% of the households, they do not belong around the country. They do not belong to a Jewish synagogue, which means, and I should have done the math, and I got to still write it down as a kid, which is a horrible thing. 36%, 36% of all the Jews belong to a synagogue. That's it. No question about it. Here's the odd thing. Among income, if you make between $100,000 and $199,000, 38%, 50,000 to 99,000, 35%, and $50,000 and under, which represents a smaller population of the Jews, is 23%. That's
So you're
it.
saying the more money you make, the more
The more people, yeah, the more people go to a synagogue, but, you think 38% is a number to be proud of? Which means if a person makes over $200,000 a year, only 38% belong, which means what? 60, whatever it is, 62%. I did it. 62%, very good. 62% do not. Okay. So I wanted to take some time today to really review the state of Judaism in America today. And again, the purpose of doing this is because we need to examine ourselves on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, not only as individuals, but as people. Why? Because when we pray, do we pray in the singular or do we pray in the plural?
plural,
Do we pray individually or inclusively?
inclusively.
Yep. And inclusively, how are we doing as a people, according to this data?
Not great.
I was hoping you were going to say that. If you live
Okay.
a cultural Jewish life, you're doing fine. You're doing great. But here's the question. If we don't do something in 20, 30 years from now, when the younger kids, aside from the Orthodox, do not go to a service regularly, are we going to need rabbis? Nope. We're going to need cantors? Nope. Are we going to need synagogues? Nope. They'll continue to merge. And it is this Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur that prior to the holidays and during the holidays, we need to do what one of the respondents said, and that is put pressure, not more than one respondent, put pressure on people to come back to religion. Because if we can just get our numbers up to American averages of 41%, meaning we need to double the attendance. Okay, here comes. Go ahead. I'll stop.
No,
I'll
and when
stop
you're
laughing.
saying put pressure, and you know the nature of people, without getting in anything, we're trying to put pressure on people to get vaccinated. That's not working.
Oh,
That's
ouch!
not working.
Ouch! What a nice zinger that
That's
is.
not working.
Oh, too bad you're wrong.
And anytime you put pressure, people go the other way.
Too bad you're wrong. Nice
Okay.
try, though. Nice try.
Okay, well,
Nice try.
it's coming up now
Nice
before.
try. Nope. In the first round of vaccines, okay, what was it? 66% of all Americans got the vaccine.
Yes.
Nice try. Then they put pressure on, and all of a sudden another 20 million got vaccines. We still have 80 million to go.
Right.
I'll go ahead with that number, but don't tell me that this pressure and because that one I'm going to shoot a hole in. Then I think I did a good job doing it. So nice try though. I compliment you on that. So during this Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, it's really time to take these numbers to heart and don't accept them. Don't accept them. Work to change them. And I feel somewhat guilty in saying this, but I'll do it anyway. Yesterday, I held my seventh year of high school, Hebrew high school. And I asked the kids, why'd you come back? Some of them are there for 5 years, 4 years, 3 years, 2 years, 1 year. An overwhelming of the majority of the kids that have been with me for 5, 6 years, maybe longer, I've had them since third grade, they said the following: Mr. Greenberg, we want to learn more about Judaism. Now, do they all go to religious services? No. Do they all consider themselves cultural Jews? No. Do they consider themselves Jews by religion? Yes. Are they proud of their Jewish identity? Yes. Do they know how to lead services? In many cases, yes. Why? Not necessarily because of me as a teacher, but the curriculum that we developed. And I do teach them Jewish laws. I do teach them halakha. I do teach them all this kind of stuff. And this is conservative. And they've been able to relate to it and in many instances adopt to it. That's the message of the Pew Research Report. They gave us the reasons why, they gave us the reasons why not. So as we daven together and as we pray together, well, before I conclude,
Yeah.
give me your input of this
Oh,
discussion.
it's very interesting. It's very interesting. It is, with the exception of the number changing, it's the same data that's been given time and time again that as Jews, we, you know, our people are not always invested, and unless we change that, it will wither away. But it's been said that it will be withered away many, many times. So we're still holding on, even if it's a small percentage, and hopefully we can reach some of these people.
Yes. So with that being said, um, we have a really good Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Shmini Atzeret, Hoshana Rabbah, Simchas Torah services set up and established to go. You'll hear more about that as we get very close to the high holidays. And with that, Carol and I wish you a Shana Tova. May we all be written in the book of life, in the book of health, in the book of sustenance, and in the book of happiness. My name is Andy Greenberg,
My name is Carol Greenberg.
and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much. Bye bye.